Commander Vex 9 adjusted his 4 eye stalks, each one swiveling independently as he studied the sensor readings floating before him in holographic splendor. The bridge of the Dominion warship Searing Claw hummed with the usual efficiency of a hegemony vessel. Crew members from 3 different species worked in perfect synchronization, their movements as precise as clockwork. "Sir," came the voice of Navigation Officer Thrum, a bulky Corvaxi whose shell gleamed under the blue-tinted lights. "We have an unidentified vessel approaching the Nexus 7 trading station." Vex 9's main eye focused on the tactical display while his secondary eyes continued monitoring other systems. The ship in question appeared on screen as a simple wireframe outline, its dimensions and mass clearly visible. Specifications: 800 meters long, 200 wide. Mass indicates heavy cargo capacity. Standard human merchant configuration, sir. Thrum's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a shrug among his kind. Nothing unusual about it. A soft chuckle escaped from Communications Officer Yilla, her serpentine form coiled around her station. Humans and their cargo obsession. They'll pack anything into those flying storage containers of theirs. Vex 9 allowed himself a moment of amusement. The Terran Federation's reputation for treating everything like a shipping problem was well established throughout the galaxy. Need to evacuate a colony? Load everyone into cargo containers. Want to explore a new system? Fill a ship with supplies and send it off. The humans approached space travel like interstellar movers, which made perfect sense given their species' tendency to spread across every habitable rock they could find. If signature confirms it, as the merchant vessel Steady Prophet, Thrum continued, his voice carrying the bored tone of someone who'd seen 1,000 similar ships. Registry shows it's hauling agricultural equipment to the Outer Rim colonies. Of course they are, Vex 9 muttered, his third eye rolling, probably full of tractors and fertilizer spreaders. The humans would colonize a black hole if they thought they could grow corn on the event horizon. The bridge crew shared what passed for laughter among their respective species. It was a running joke throughout the hegemony that humans would attempt to farm literally anywhere, regardless of how unsuitable the environment might be. There were documented cases of human colonists trying to establish agricultural operations on planets with toxic atmospheres, simply because the soil composition looked promising. "Sir," Yila's voice carried a note of mild confusion, "they're requesting permission to dock at Nexus 7, standard merchant protocols." Vex 9's attention remained split between multiple displays. The Steady Prophet certainly looked like every other human cargo hauler he'd encountered. Boxy, practical, with all the aesthetic appeal of a flying warehouse. The humans had never been much for ship design elegance, preferring function over form in ways that made other species wince. Grant them docking permission, he decided, and send the usual inspection team. Make sure they're not smuggling anything more interesting than crop rotation manuals. As the order was transmitted, Vex 9 found his thoughts drifting to the broader situation in this sector. The hegemony had been experiencing increased piracy lately, with several merchant convoys disappearing without trace. Intelligence suggested the attacks were being coordinated by someone with military-grade equipment, but so far, they'd been unable to identify the source. "Commander," Thrum's voice interrupted his musings, "the Steady Prophet is adjusting course for docking Bay 12. On the main screen, the human vessel moved with the typical grace of a flying brick. Its maneuvering thrusters fired in short, controlled bursts, nudging the massive ship toward the space station's docking ring. The process was so routine, so perfectly ordinary, that Vex 9 almost turned his attention elsewhere. Almost, something nagged at him. A subtle wrongness that he couldn't quite identify. His primary eye focused more intently on the sensor readings, scanning for anything unusual. The ship's mass was consistent with a loaded cargo hauler. Its energy signature matched standard merchant vessel parameters. Even its flight pattern followed typical human commercial protocols. So why did his instincts insist something was off? "Yilla, pull up the Steady Prophet's recent travel logs," he ordered. The communications officer's fingers danced across her console, her movements fluid and precise. According to their filed flight plan, They departed from Terra Prime 6 standard weeks ago, with stops at New Geneva, Haven's Rest, and Prosperity Station. All agricultural worlds, Thrum noted, fits their cargo manifest perfectly. Vex 9 nodded. But the feeling of unease refused to go away. He'd been in command long enough to trust his intuition, especially when it came to potential threats. Run a deep scan on their ship's configuration. I want to know if anything about that vessel doesn't match standard human merchant specifications. Sir, with respect, Yila's tone carried a hint of confusion. Is that necessary? It's just another human cargo hauler. They all look the same because they're all built from the same basic templates. That was true enough. Human ship design philosophy focused heavily on modularity and standardization. Why design 50 different types of cargo ships when you could build one really good design and mass produce it? It was efficient, cost-effective, and completely predictable, which was exactly why Vex 9's instincts were screaming at him. "Humor me," he said simply. The deep scan took several minutes to complete, during which the Steady Prophet continued its leisurely approach to the docking bay. Its movements remained perfectly normal, its communications with station traffic control following standard protocols to the letter. When the results finally appeared on his display, Vex 9 felt his blood temperature drop several degrees. "Interesting," he murmured, his voice carefully neutral. Thrum leaned forward, his massive form casting shadows across the tactical console. "The hull configuration is standard human merchant class," Vex 9 said slowly, his eyes studying the data. "But the internal structure, that's not a cargo hold layout." Yila's serpentine form straightened. "What do you mean?" "Gal. I mean," Vex 9's voice carried the first hints of genuine concern. "That ship has been gutted and rebuilt from the inside out. Those aren't cargo compartments, they're weapons bays." The bridge fell silent except for the usual background hum of ship systems. Every crew member suddenly found themselves paying much closer attention to the innocent-looking vessel on their screens. "But sir," Thrum's voice carried doubt, "the mass readings, the energy signatures, everything matches a loaded cargo hauler." "Yes," Vex 9 agreed, his tone grim, "which means they've done an exceptional job of making a warship look like a merchant vessel. The question is, why?" As if in response to his words, the Steady Prophet suddenly changed course. Instead of continuing toward docking bay 12, it began a slow turn that would bring it directly in line with the searing claw. "Sir," Yila's voice was tight with tension, "they're hailing us directly. Put them through." The main screen flickered, replacing the external view with the image of a human face. The man appeared to be in his 40s, with graying hair and the kind of weathered features that spoke of years spent in space. He wore what looked like a standard merchant marine uniform, complete with cargo handling patches and certification badges. "Greetings, hegemony vessel," the human said, his voice carrying a slight accent that Vex 9 couldn't quite place. "This is Captain Marcus Reed of the merchant vessel Steady Prophet. We're having some minor technical difficulties with our docking systems and wondered if you might be able to provide assistance." Vex 9 studied the human's face carefully. Reed appeared calm, professional, exactly what you'd expect from a veteran cargo hauler. But there was something in his eyes, a sharpness that seemed at odds with his casual demeanor. "Captain Reed," Vex 9 replied carefully, "we'd be happy to assist. What seems to be the nature of your technical difficulties?" Reed's smile was perfectly friendly. "Oh, nothing too serious. Just some alignment issues with our primary docking clamps. Happens all the time on these old cargo haulers. You know how it is." Vex 9 did not, in fact, know how it was. Docking clamp malfunctions were relatively rare on properly maintained vessels, and the Steady Prophet was supposedly only 6 years old according to its registry. "Of course," he said aloud. "We can provide a technical team to assist with repairs. That's very kind of you, Commander." "Very kind indeed." Reed's smile widened slightly. "Though I should mention, we're also carrying some rather sensitive cargo that requires careful handling. Prototype agricultural equipment, you understand, the kind of thing that might be of interest to certain parties." Vex 9's eyes narrowed. That sounded suspiciously like a threat wrapped in merchant pleasantries. I'm sure your cargo is perfectly safe, Captain Reed. Oh, I'm certain it is, Reed agreed. After all, we've taken very special precautions to ensure its security. Very special precautions indeed. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Sir. Thrum's voice was barely above a whisper. What do we do? X9 considered their options. The steady Prophet was still approaching, now less than 2 kilometers away. If it really was a disguised warship, they were in a potentially dangerous situation. But if his suspicions were wrong, if it really was just a cargo hauler with some unusual internal modifications, then taking aggressive action could create a diplomatic incident. Yilla, send a message to Nexus 7. Tell them to evacuate Docking Bay 12 and implement Security Protocol 7. And if they ask why, tell them we have reason to believe the approaching vessel may not be what it appears to be. As Yilla transmitted the warning, Vex 9 continued studying the sensor readings. The steady Prophet maintained its steady approach, showing no signs of aggressive intent. Its weapons systems, if it had any, remained powered down and hidden. Commander, Thrum's voice carried a note of confusion. I'm reading some unusual energy fluctuations from their engine section. What kind of fluctuations? It's hard to say, sir. The readings keep shifting, almost like they're using some kind of masking technology. Vex 9 felt a chill run down his spine. Masking technology was military-grade equipment, not something you'd find on a civilian cargo hauler. The humans were definitely up to something, but what? Sir, Yilla called out suddenly, I'm detecting multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The tactical display updated immediately, showing 6 new vessels materializing from the swirling energies of hyperspace. They were smaller than the steady Prophet, but their configurations were unmistakably military. Identification? Vex 9 demanded. Unknown, sir. They're not broadcasting any IF signals, and their hull configurations don't match any known hegemony designs. Vex 9's mind raced. 6 unknown military vessels appearing just as a suspicious cargo hauler made contact with them? That was too much of a coincidence to ignore. All hands, battle stations, he ordered. Raise shields and charge weapons. The bridge lighting shifted to combat mode as the Searing Claw prepared for potential battle. Around them, the crew moved with practiced efficiency, their earlier casual mood replaced by focused professionalism. Sir, Thrum reported. The steady Prophet is still approaching, range now 1,500 meters. And the unknown contacts accelerating toward our position. They'll be within weapons range in 12 minutes. X9 considered their situation. They were facing 7 potential enemy vessels, including one that had gotten dangerously close under false pretenses. The smart thing to do would be to call for reinforcements and try to withdraw to a safer distance, but something told him it was already too late for that. Captain Reed, he said aloud, I think it's time you and I had an honest conversation. The main screen flickered back to life, showing Reed's face once again. But this time, the friendly merchant captain facade was completely gone. In its place was the cold, calculating expression of a military commander. Commander Vex 9, Reed said, his voice now carrying a hard edge. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. So, you're not really hauling agricultural equipment? Reed's laugh was sharp and humorless. Oh, but I am, Commander. I'm hauling the most important crop humanity has ever grown, which is, Reed's smile was predatory. Victory. The silence stretched across the bridge like a taut wire ready to snap. Commander Vex 9 felt his secondary hearts begin beating faster as he processed Reed's words. The victory is a crop. What kind of twisted human metaphor was that? Explain yourself, Captain, Vex 9 said. His voice steady despite the growing alarm in his chest. Reed's expression shifted to something resembling pity. You really don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? The hegemony has gotten so comfortable, so confident in its superiority, that you've forgotten what humans are actually capable of. On the tactical display, the 6 unknown vessels continued their approach, Vex 9 noticed they weren't moving in standard military formation. Instead, they seemed to be positioning themselves in a pattern he couldn't quite identify. Thrum. "What's the status on those incoming ships?" he asked without taking his eyes off Reed. "Strange, sir. They're not following any attack pattern I recognize. It's almost like they're trying to surround something." "But not us," Reed chuckled. "Very observant, Commander, but you're still thinking too small." Before Vex 9 could respond, Yila's voice cut through the tension. "Sir, I'm detecting massive hyperspace distortions throughout the system. Something big is coming through." The main tactical display suddenly exploded with new contacts, dozens of them, appearing at multiple points around the system's perimeter, ships of various sizes, all broadcasting human identification codes. "Impossible," Thrum whispered, his mandibles clicking in distress. "There are over 50 vessels out there." X9's mind reeled. A fleet that size represented a significant portion of the Terran Federation's military strength. What were they doing here in hegemony space? Still confused, Commander? Reed's voice carried mock sympathy. "Let me help you understand. 6 months ago, your people made a serious mistake." "What mistake?" "Tease, you decided that human merchant vessels were legitimate targets for your piracy suppression operations." Vex 9 felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. The recent increase in missing cargo ships, the ones intelligence had attributed to organized pirates, those weren't pirates. No, they weren't. Reed's smile turned glacial. They were hegemony patrol ships, following orders to intercept and confiscate human cargo under the pretext of searching for contraband. 17 ships, Commander. 17 human vessels and their crews, simply gone without a trace. That's ridiculous. The hegemony doesn't engage in piracy. Call it what you want. Reed shrugged. The families of those missing crews call it murder. Yila's voice interrupted again, more urgent this time. "Sir, the human fleet is moving into attack positions around Nexus 7. Vex 9 turned to study the tactical display. The human ships had indeed formed a loose sphere around the trading station, but they weren't targeting it. Instead, they seemed to be waiting for something. "You see, Commander," Reed continued, "the problem with treating human cargo ships like pinatas is that eventually, someone notices the pattern. And when that someone happens to be Admiral Sarah Martinez of Terran Intelligence, well, things get interesting very quickly." The name hit Vex 9 like a physical blow. Martinez was legendary throughout the galaxy, known for her unconventional tactics and ruthless efficiency. If she was involved in this operation, the situation was far worse than he'd imagined. "What do you want?" he asked, hoping his voice didn't betray his growing fear. "Want?" Reed laughed. "Commander, what we want is justice. What we're going to get is a demonstration." As if summoned by his words, the steady prophet began to change. Its outer hull sections started retracting, revealing the true nature of the vessel beneath. What had appeared to be cargo bay doors opened to expose weapon emplacements. Sensor arrays extended from concealed compartments. The ship's entire profile shifted as hidden armor plates deployed. "Beautiful, isn't she?" Reed said proudly. "The steady prophet is the first of a new class of human warship. We call them Q ships, after an old Earth naval tradition. They look like harmless merchants until the moment they don't." The transformed vessel was impressive, Vex 9 had to admit. Sleek weapon systems emerged from what had been mundane cargo handling equipment. The ship's entire center section reconfigured itself into what was clearly a massive cannon assembly of some kind. "Now," Reed continued, "here's what's going to happen. You're going to contact your superiors and arrange a meeting with whoever's been giving the orders to attack human shipping. We're going to have a conversation about compensation for our losses. And if we refuse?" Reed's expression darkened. "Then we demonstrate exactly why attacking human civilians is a very bad idea." Before Vex 9 could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the bridge. The tactical display lit up with new contacts, these ones much closer to home. "Sir," Thrum's voice was tight with panic, "I'm reading hyperspace signatures directly above and below us. Something's materializing right on top of our position." Two massive shapes flickered into existence, one above the searing claw and one below. They were unlike anything Vex 9 had ever seen, clearly human in design but enormous beyond belief. Each vessel was easily twice the size of his own ship, bristling with weapon systems and sensor arrays. "Allow me to introduce the Retribution and the Inevitable," Reed said casually. "Dreadnought-class vessels, specially designed for this operation. They've been sitting in hyperspace for the past 3 hours, waiting for my signal." Vex 9 stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The two dreadnoughts had positioned themselves perfectly to prevent any escape attempt. Combined with the fleet surrounding Nexus 7, the humans had effectively trapped the entire hegemony presence in the system. "This is an act of war," he said finally. "No, Commander. This is an act of accounting." Reed's voice carried the weight of cold authority. 17 ships, 342 crew members, and approximately 50 million credits worth of cargo. The Terran Federation is prepared to discuss terms for compensation. You can't seriously expect the hegemony to negotiate under threat. Reed's laugh was sharp and bitter. "The same way our merchant crews couldn't expect to travel peacefully through space without being murdered by your patrol ships." Yilla suddenly straightened at her station. "Sir, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Hegemony High Command. Put it through." On. The screen flickered, replacing Reed's image with that of Admiral Corthax, the Hegemony's senior military commander. His reptilian features were tense with barely controlled anger. "Commander Vex 9, what is your status, sir?" "We're currently surrounded by a human fleet of approximately 60 vessels. They claim we've been attacking their merchant shipping." Corthax's expression didn't change. "And?" The single word hung in the air like a confession. Vex 9 felt something cold settle in his chest as he realized the implications. "Sir, are you saying the attacks on human shipping were authorized?" "I'm saying, Commander, that certain operations have been conducted in the interests of hegemony security. The details are classified." Behind him, Vex 9 could hear his bridge crew shifting uncomfortably. The humans hadn't been lying. The hegemony really had been attacking civilian vessels. "Sir, with respect, we're facing a significant military force. The humans appear to be seeking compensation for their losses." "Compensation?" Corthax's voice carried dangerous undertones. "The hegemony does not negotiate with terrorists." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. After a moment, Reed's face reappeared on the screen. "I take it your superiors aren't interested in reasonable discussion?" Vex 9 didn't answer immediately. His mind was racing, trying to process the moral implications of what he'd learned. His own government had authorized attacks on civilian shipping, then left him to face the consequences. "Commander?" Reed's voice carried a note of genuine sympathy. "I understand this is difficult. You thought you were serving a just cause. What happens now?" Vex 9 asked quietly. "Now, we demonstrate the consequences of attacking human civilians. But first, I want you to contact Nexus 7 and order all civilian personnel to evacuate to emergency shelters. You're going to attack the station? It's not the station itself. But what happens next is going to be educational." As Vex 9 gave the evacuation order, he watched the human fleet repositioning itself. The smaller vessels were moving away from Nexus 7, while the larger ones maintained their positions. "Ready, Commander?" Reed asked. Before Vex 9 could respond, the Steady Prophet fired its main weapon. But instead of targeting the station or the searing claw, the massive energy beam lanced out toward empty space, several kilometers away from any solid objects. The result was spectacular. Space itself seemed to tear open, revealing a swirling vortex of energy and twisted light. The hyperspace rift expanded rapidly, becoming a gaping wound in reality itself. "Impressive, isn't it?" Reed's voice carried professional pride. "Hyperspace torpedo, our latest innovation, creates a temporary rift that destabilizes local space-time, completely harmless to organic matter, but absolutely devastating to any artificial structures caught in its influence." As if to demonstrate his point, a small asteroid drifted too close to the rift. The moment it crossed the boundary, the rock simply ceased to exist, torn apart at the molecular level by the hyperspace distortion. The weapon has a range of approximately 50,000 kilometers, Reed continued conversationally. More than enough to reach any of your major shipyards or military installations from a safe distance. Vex 9 stared at the display in horror. The implications were staggering. If the humans could deploy this weapon from concealed cargo ships, they could strike anywhere in hegemony space without warning. "This is madness," he whispered. "This is justice," Reed corrected. "For every human life lost to your people's aggression." The hyperspace rift began to collapse in on itself, leaving nothing but empty space where it had been, but the demonstration had made its point. The humans possessed weapons that could threaten the very foundations of hegemony power. "So here's the deal, Commander," Reed said, his tone becoming businesslike. "The Terran Federation is prepared to forget this entire incident ever happened. All we require is compensation for our losses and a formal agreement that human shipping will no longer be molested by hegemony forces. And if we refuse..." Reed's smile was cold as vacuum. "Then every major hegemony installation within 50,000 kilometers of a trade route becomes a potential target. And trust me, Commander, we have a lot of cargo ships." Vex 9 looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. He could see the same realization in their eyes that he felt in his hearts. The humans hadn't just built a weapon. They'd built a delivery system that could reach anywhere, anytime, without warning. "I'll need to contact my superiors," he said finally. "Of course." "But Commander?" Reed's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry you got caught up in this. You seem like a decent being trying to do his job. But your government made a choice when they decided human lives were expendable. Now they get to live with the consequences." The transmission ended, leaving Vex 9 alone with his thoughts and the weight of impossible decisions. Around him, his crew waited for orders that he wasn't sure he had the authority to give. But one thing was certain: the galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place for anyone foolish enough to threaten human civilians. And somehow, Vex 9 suspected, this was exactly what the humans had intended all along. "Sir." Thrum's voice broke the silence. "What are your orders?" Vex 9 studied the tactical display one more time, taking in the positions of the human fleet, the two dreadnoughts flanking his ship, and the empty space where the hyperspace rift had demonstrated humanity's newest nightmare weapon. "Send a message to High Command," he said quietly. "Tell them we need to talk." Because sometimes, he reflected, the only way to win a war was to make sure it never started in the first place.